Hello and welcome to the Beckoning Bookshelf. I'm your host, Jeffrey Ashcraft. I'm not just going to talk about novels on this channel, I'm going to talk about all types of books, including nonfiction. And the first nonfiction book I'm going to talk about was given to me by my father. He's been studying about anxiety recently, found this book, liked it, and decided to give me a copy, which I greatly appreciate. The book I'm talking about is titled At Last a Life, Anxiety and Panic Free. This was written by Paul David and published in 2006, and I believe it was self-published because he has the copyright. He has since published a second book. I suppose you could call it a sequel, maybe, because it's titled At Last a Life and Beyond. And that was published in 2016. Now, before we get back to this book, we need to talk a bit more about anxiety. So, in a 2025 study released this past August, South Denver Therapy reported that 19% of adults in the United States of America have been diagnosed with some form of anxiety disorder within the past year. By doing rough calculations, that's about 50 million people. That's a lot of people. So, if you don't suffer from some sort of anxiety disorder, you probably know someone who does. And on that, anxiety disorders are a very real thing. I've known several people who have suffered from some type of anxiety disorder or some type of severe anxiety. Now, I also have to set the stage for myself. I am no medical professional of any kind. I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not any of those things. I have no medical knowledge whatsoever in any of this. Further, I also don't suffer from anxiety. I don't have an anxiety disorder. So I have limited knowledge and experience in that as well. So if I say something, if I get a term wrong, or if I say something that's incorrect, please have patience with me. Of course, feel free to correct me in the comments, but, have patience. I'm learning as I go. So, let's get back to the book. Is it a good book? Well, yes, I think it is. It is, for a self-published book, I think it is brilliantly written. It is written very, very well. It is very easy to follow. It is engaging. The various ways and analogies that Paul David gives to explain the concepts he's trying to get across are amazing. And he uses so many different ones. There's such a variety to them that at least one of them will probably click with somebody. So, on that note, if there is anything negative about the book, well, let me put it this way. The book is very, very repetitive. And at times, for me, for someone who doesn't suffer from anxiety, it kind of got a little tedious. Got wearisome to just continue reading about the same concept over and over and over again. But it's repetitive on purpose, and I believe it fulfills that purpose. So I wouldn't say that's a negative for this book. It's just the closest thing I can come up with for some type of negative critique about it. But like I said, it's on purpose. And Paul David actually talks about this in the book. He says, yes, this book is repetitive. Yes, we've already talked about this concept. Here is why. He does it for two reasons. First, he talks about how repetition helps us remember things, which is true. Second, he wants to make sure that the readers fully understand what he's talking about, that they really get the message. That's why it's so repetitive, and every time it is repetitive, he talks about it in a different analogy. He gives a different example of it. So like I said, at least one of the examples or one of the analogies is going to click, likely for most people. And I really... Also, the book comes across as someone who really knows what they're talking about from experience. Not just like a medical professional who's read about it, studied a lot about it, but doesn't have any like personal experience with it. You totally understand that Paul is talking from a place of experience, that he knows what he's talking about because he's been there. So I think that was very valuable. That was a good feel of the book. Now, I'm not going to talk about all the mitigations that he suggests and all the things he talks about, but there is one that I do want to talk about, and it's like kind of like the overarching mitigation, the overarching solution on how to deal with anxiety. And I want to talk about it because I have a slight experience with it, I think. And I think it's one of the biggest hurdles to figuring out what he's talking about. So he compares anxiety as energy in our bodies. And when we have an anxiety attack or an anxiety episode, that energy is trying to be released. That's how he explains it. And oftentimes, people will not want to release that energy. They'll try to keep it in. They'll try to bottle it up. And of course, we know what happens when you bottle up things inside you. You bottle up your feelings. We've seen Inside Out and Inside Out 2. It's not good. You shouldn't bottle things up. And that's how a lot of people with anxiety disorders wind up being exhausted, according to Paul David, is they keep this ongoing internal fight to keep all this pent-up energy in them. And every time there's another anxiety episode, there's more and more energy that just gets pent up in there. And it becomes harder and harder to keep down. And so it's just a constant fight. Well, the solution he gives is to just let the energy out. Just let the energy go. Just learn to live with your anxiety. And that's practically it. And it sounds incredibly simple, but I know it sounds simple, and things that sound simple are often not simple. And my first reaction to this, and again, I don't suffer from anxiety, but when someone has given me a solution of, oh, hey, just live with it, my first reaction is, okay, if I could live with it, it wouldn't be a problem now, would it? Right? I mean, if you can live with whatever thing you're dealing with, then it isn't exactly a problem. So the two they don't seem to correlate initially. But I do have an experience that really helped me better understand what he's talking about with all this pent-up energy and letting it go. Not long ago, I was in a car accident, and it was not a fun time. I'm not sure if I can think of a fun car accident, but regardless, this wasn't fun. On the positive side, no one was severely injured. No one was severely hurt. That was great, wonderful, awesome, yay. It still wasn't fun. And starting that night, the night after the car accident, and the following days, my brain would force me to relive the car accident. Like, I've no choice of my own. I could be eating breakfast, I could be reading a book, I could be watching a movie, taking a nap. Doesn't matter. My brain suddenly decides to, hey, you remember that car accident you were in? Yeah, it was a couple days ago. Okay, let's relive it. Yeah, let's go. And it'll put me right back in that seat just before the impact and just have me go through the whole thing all over again. It was just forced home videos. Just strap me to the chair. So, yeah, and I had no control over this. And every time it happened, I would just feel very anxious. I would feel very tense. And I would always try to stop the impact from happening. Just somehow, just try to stop it. And it never worked. The impact always hit. And afterwards, I would always feel tired. I would need a breather. I would feel very uncomfortable. It was not a fun time. Now, I'll tell you a little something about me. And that is, if I'm in a situation that I don't like, I try to change it as best I can. That's just how I am naturally. So I didn't like this happening, so I wanted to stop it. I wanted to change it. And this was all before I read this book, by the way. I read this book recently. This happened a few years ago. And could I stop my brain from replaying the memory? No, because it wasn't my choice. My brain was just doing it on its own. I could not control that in any way. Okay. Well, why was I so scared of it? I mean, it was just a memory. So memories can't really do anything to me. I mean, I can't change history. I can't make it so the accident didn't happen at all. So why don't I just let the memory just play out? Why am I fighting it? That was my thought process. So I decided next time my brain would force me to watch these home videos, I would just let the video play out. I would just let the memory go, let the impact hit, and see what happens. So, interestingly, the next time this happened was actually when I was driving, which was, of course, the worst time for this to happen. And I was driving, and my brain suddenly decided, home video time, and I immediately tensed up. And then I remembered, wait a minute, I was going to let the memory just play out. I wasn't going to fight it. Just let the impact hit and just see what happens. So I just let the memory play, let the impact hit, and it went away, and I was fine. I didn't feel overly anxious. I didn't need to take a breather. I wasn't sweating. I was fine. And I started doing this every time my brain had me relive the memory, and it started happening less and less. And now it doesn't happen at all. And it really did. I understand what Paul is talking about when he talks about how it's energy that needs to be released. And it kind of makes sense if I were to explain it in that way. I don't know why this happens, but apparently one could view it as the car accident caused a bunch of energy in my body that needed to be released. Why? How? I don't know. But that's just what happened. And my brain, forcing me to relive that car accident, it was trying to release this energy. That's how it was doing it. And every time I fought against it, I would keep that energy in. I would bottle it up, and it wouldn't be a fun time. But when I started just letting the energy out, the energy just went out and never came back, and I'm good. So that was one of the ways to help me better understand what Paul is talking about here. And I think that's one of the things that comes with this lesson is everybody has to come to understand it in their own way. Because it really is something that's hard to wrap your brain around yourself. You don't fully get it. And I think everybody has to come to understand it their own way. And what Paul discusses here can help you understand it and help you relate your own experiences to it. But I think everybody has to come to figure out what it means by themselves. Now, one other thing I want to talk about, this is a fun kind of side note that helps me also better understand what Paul David talks about here with his solutions and with anxiety is, hold on a second, Celeste. This is a video game I played years back, and it's one of my favorite video games. Top 10, hands down. Love the game. Music is great. I'm not going to make this video all about Celeste, but Celeste echoes a lot of the same themes that Paul talks about in this book, including the solutions. And this was just another way to help me understand what exactly Paul is explaining. And just to give a brief synopsis, for those unfamiliar with this, Madeline is who you play as. You play as Madeline, and she goes to climb Celeste Mountain because she wants to change herself. And as she climbs, you learn that she actually has an anxiety disorder. And she has anxiety attacks. And that's why she's trying to change herself. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will say that the game pretty much agrees with Paul's book, with Paul's viewpoint on things. So, okay. Really awesome game. Apparently it's really difficult, which I didn't think it was all that difficult, but I guess I was just too invested. But should you read this book? Yes, I think you should. But I'm going to talk about that for two groups of people. First, if you have anxiety, should you read the book? Yes, I think so. Because it doesn't cost a whole lot. So, the solutions that Paul talks about are all pretty much free. He does say that in severe cases, or in just any case, where medication and professional help is needed, of course, get the medication and get the professional help. That sometimes is a thing. But for the most part, the solutions that Paul talks about are all free. They don't cost anything, no subscriptions, no nothing. You just try it yourself. So the only cost you would have is the book itself, if you have to buy it, which says it's 15 euros, I don't know, like $20. If you can get it from a library, all the better. And just the time it takes for you to read it. That's really it. And if you're thinking, well, it's not going to work, well, that's kind of what Paul thought before he tried it. He went after solution after solution after solution, and then he finally decided, okay, I'm going to try this other thing, just letting it go, and the other solutions he talks about, because I'm out of options. Nothing else has worked. And it worked. And Paul also talks about other people who have written to him who have said that it's also worked for them. So you don't really have anything to lose to just give it a try. Now, should you read this book if you don't suffer from an anxiety disorder of some kind? Yes, I think you should. Why? Two reasons. First, you can come to learn more about yourself. Like for me, I already do a lot of the stuff that Paul talks about here, and maybe that's why I don't suffer from anxiety. Like I said with that car accident, I already kind of just let the energy just flow out of me. So you can come to learn more about yourself. But also, you can come to learn more about those who do suffer from anxiety, because Paul explains the situation of those who do suffer from anxiety very, very well. And if you don't suffer from it, it's really hard to comprehend the situation of those who do. So if you can better understand their situation, you can better support them, better provide some help. Now, could you, fix it? Like take away their anxiety? Probably not. But you could at least be a better listening ear. And that is always a good thing to be. A good listening ear, a good shoulder to lean on. That's always valuable. So if you don't suffer from anxiety, I still suggest that you read the book. I still think it's a good book to read. And that's all I have for this episode. Thank you for being here. If you've read this book, At Last to Life, or the sequel, I don't know, At Last to Life and Beyond, tell me about it. Tell me what you think about it. And if you are aware of other books about anxiety and panic disorders that were helpful, that are good to learn about the subject, please tell me about those. I'm always willing to learn. I always love finding new interesting books. And thank you always for being here. I always appreciate you being here. I know your time is valuable, and I really hope I don't waste it. Have a good day, and go find yourself a good book.